Good morning and welcome to the first kind of real lecture for child, family, and community. Today we are going to be looking at ecology and socialization. We're going to be covering the basics of socialization, some definitions, what it might look like as well. And I would like to kind of start with this kind of bullseye, which is the visual representation of the theory that we've been learning about. So I started last week, I gave you a brief definition of what ecology is. If I needed to go ahead and define it further, I would think of ecology. So we talked about environments, and that's very, very true. The interrelationships between organisms and their environments. And this can be for anything: worms, chickens, monkeys, chimpanzees, elephants, bacteria, anything in kind of our human world has interrelationships between an organism and its environment. When we're working with humans, we're a lot more complex and messy, I guess, than a worm or a chicken or something like that. So we have to kind of add in our biology because it's quite complex with our DNA and our genetics, our hormones, the complexity of our system, our blood, our muscles, everything. So we're quite complex physical beings. And then psychology, we have rich inner lives that are developing through our lifespan. We're very, very social creatures. And we also exist in a culture as well. So human ecology is your relationships, your environments, and then we have to add in these contexts to you as the individual. So that's right here, that's that orange part in our bullseye theory, Brofenbinder's ecological theory right here. This is your individual and how you are going to kind of work with your environments. Social ecology is a theory that focuses on how the child interacts with the systems and the world interacts with the child. So these arrows, that's why I picked this one. It's a really great way of seeing that it's kind of bidirectional or reciprocal. The child has relationships with their environment and their environment has relationships with the child. So they're both working on each other. So once again, this is Brofenbrenner, Yuri Brofenbrenner. We talked about the fact that he was a Russian immigrant, very important in the kind of the 1960s and 70s for understanding and kind of moving forward our understanding of children and child development within their environment, which kind of had been started with Vygotsky and some other theorists, but he really popularized this theory, and now a lot of people are working on his. So this is Brofenbrenner's ecological model, and there is his little smiling face right there. Socialization, we're going to look at aims, agents, methods, and outcomes. So if I had to give you just the basic definition of what socialization is, it's how humans acquire knowledge, skills, characteristic traits that enable them to participate in their group or society. So not another person's group, but their specific group and society, because we all have different ways of doing things. For example, what do you say when somebody sneezes? What do? You say salud, you say gesundheit, do you say God bless you? So those are some of the skills that we might be teaching people. How do you cross the road? What do you say when you're at the table and you burp? Is it socially appropriate for you to burp at the table, or would that be really taboo? So skills can be very small like that, but mean a lot in a different culture, or they can be larger kind of skills for children, learning how to play on a sports team, learning how to be good sportsmanship. For adults, we're learning skills. Who should I hold the door open for? Which side of the sidewalk should I be on? And then knowledge, all of the knowledge that you should have. If you lived in a rural area, that might be more related to being outside, farming, hiking. In a city, a large city, it might be more about being street smart and that type of stuff. And then characteristic traits, so your personality traits. There are certain personality traits that we typically like in America: optimism, happiness. People ask, how you doing? And we don't really kind of want to know how you're doing. It's just something that we've been socialized to ask, and you're socialized to not really tell somebody. In other countries, they might be more in touch with characteristics that we consider more negative: melancholy, sadness. So we are socializing our children in knowledge, skills, and characteristic traits for growing up in America at this particular time. So an example would be help your baby brother with a sweater. or clock in at 8 o'clock and ensure proper supervision of 12 3-year-olds. And I know you're not in a group, but I'd like you, if you can, to think of 3 things that you might be doing in your life. So as an individual, is your boss socializing you? For example, when should you clock in? A skill would be knowing what supervision is and what it means for 3-year-olds, and a knowledge would be 12-year-old, 3-year-olds, is that the ratio or not? A mom or a dad or a parent might say, help your baby brother with his sweater. So you as an individual, you as a brother or sister or employee, volunteer, what might be some ways that you are being socialized right now, and things that people might say to you. So try to come up with some of those. You can pause the video and think through them. These type of activities that I give you, obviously I can't tell if you're able to do them, but it will kind of help you have a deeper understanding. All right, so what we want you to do when you're being socialized is provide support. So children need a lot of support, so especially when they're infants and toddlers. We have a lot of social, emotional, and cognitive support in addition to physical. You're just feeding you, taking care of you, making sure you're safe. But socialization is helping them with the skills that they're going to need to be successful in society. So we're helping you socially and how you interact socially, emotionally, being able to take care of your inner state and what that means in your culture, and cognitive support as well, so that you have the knowledge that you need. Typically in the United States, it's through more formal education. All right, so there are a lot of peers and adults who understand and should understand children and have a lot of their roles, and these are our agents of socialization. So our agents of socialization look like this. They can be somebody in your family, and these are some of the ways that they socialize you. In school, these might be some of the things that they teach you. In a club, a social group, sports, hobbies, these are some of the ways that you're socialized. In your ethnic or cultural background, you get beliefs and values and customs. In work, in addition to getting money, you have the rules and roles that you have to play and that you are being paid for. So you are learning, you're being socialized in work, how you should act, because working in a bank is really different than being a farmer, which is really different than being a teacher. So you're being socialized in how you should act in all your work roles. Media, the stereotypes, the trends, how to act, what should you do on social media, what should you not do on social media. Government, so larger macro system, also can be an agent of socialization. A lawyer, somebody like a police officer might be a representative of the government, and you're being socialized in how you should act around somebody. And then religion as well, similar to your cultural background or your ethnic background, love, guidelines on how to live. So these are examples of agents of socialization, and all of us are going to have agents of socialization in our microsystem and our exosystem and our mesosystem. So we're going to go into what some of them can be. So typically agents of socialization, especially when you're really young, are parents, larger families, extended families as well. It could be your school board, which remember is in your exo, but that's going to socialize you along with teachers and how to act at school and what the rules are that you're expected to follow. School boards set those rules typically. A waiter or somebody in the service industry is helping you understand how to be polite, how much you should tip, what it means to be polite in your culture. I went to grad school in London. And on one of my first nights there, I went out for a drink at a pub, and I went to go order 2 beers, one for me and somebody I had just met, and I went like this, and I had to order 2 beers. And doing this, so where your hand is showing the back to somebody, is like basically flipping them the bird. So I flipped off the bartender when asking for 2 beers. And then at the end, I went to go tip him, and you don't need to tip people in England. And the beer was a little bit warm. So those are all really odd things to me growing up here, where my beer is cold, I tip you, and this is not considered an obscene gesture. So those are all ways that England was socializing me, even though they're an English-speaking country and all of that. We have really different ways of being socialized. Friends are very big, especially for children going to school, adolescence, early adulthood. Your friends are socializing you and what's considered cool in your generation. Lifeguards, for example, would socialize you into water safety, how you should act at the beach in Southern California. If there's a riptide, they're going to help protect you. Firefighters, any kind of community helpers as well. So they're going to have various levels of importance. So for most of us, families are of larger importance with their agents of socialization, but depending on who you are and your culture, you could have different agents of socialization. So when we're looking at culture as well, culture is really big because that is kind of the unspoken underpinning of how you are learning behavior. So knowledge, but a lot of it is beliefs, morals, laws, customs, and traditions. And we're going to go into those individually. So I'm going to play a funny video. This is from the 1950s. It's called Candid Camera, which is a show that has been on since. But in this case, they're going to talk about socialization. So I'm going to go ahead and play that for you. All right, so that is an example of social customs. So they're kind of facing the wrong way in the elevator. So instead of facing where the doors are going to open, they're facing the other way. And then they have somebody typically in the middle right here who has no idea what's going on. And they typically follow what the group is doing because we want to typically follow our group. And he probably thought that he was doing something wrong or why are these people doing it, but went away along with it as well. So these are part of our kind of cultural and social customs. Like if you are walking on a sidewalk and you're going to run into somebody, do you step to the left or to the right? Should women be on the inside or the outside? All of these are specific to your culture. Who do you hold a door for? How long do you wait for them? All of those types of things are part of our cultural kind of customs when it comes to manners. So how do we kind of do that? So how do we kind of make somebody face kind of the wrong way in an elevator? These are some of the socializing techniques. So group pressure was a really big one. Everybody was doing something and he was looking around like, well, I guess I got to do that. Or traditions. So traditions are specific ways that we pass down kind of cultural information through generations. So a tradition might be what you eat or what you do on a religious holiday, like maybe Christmas Eve. Or what it kind of looks like. Rituals as well. So weddings are very ritual heavy. So in different cultures, weddings have a lot of significance and a lot of meaning. It's very interesting to see the differences even within Catholicism, Christianity, Judaism, even Muslim weddings as well. There's going to be a lot of rituals and they might really change according to culture all over the world as well. Routines and symbols are also that routines in like our daily life. Do you have siestas or do you have a normal 9 to 5? All of that are parts of our culture that we kind of use with we kind of exert that power with our group pressure and our group roles and then kind of traditional expectations for people. All right, so part of this is kind of our iceberg. And so our iceberg of culture is, think of an iceberg like in Titanic. So it's smaller at the top. You wouldn't think that it was so big, but it gets really, really big at the bottom. So this is the iceberg concept of culture. And above the water is visible culture or surface culture. So you can see it. So you might be able to tell what somebody's culture or religion is by how they dress. The type of visual arts that they have might be really specific to paintings or murals or street art. Same with crafts and drama and dance as well. So kind of a Indonesian dance is going to look really different than like an Irish dance. Literature and how we write and who we write about, the languages that we speak, and games that we might play, celebrations that we might have as well. So that's all things that you might be able to tell about somebody just by looking about them, about their culture. But underneath the water, so down here that we can't see about people, are kind of the unspoken rules. So we don't typically tell people to do this, but what is your concept of time? So show up late, or it's just kind of the concept of getting to it. Time is a little bit more fluid, or is it more rigid, like in the military or in European countries, it's especially Northern European countries, it's much more rigid in time. Personal space, we don't need to typically tell people, but how close do you talk to somebody? Very, very close, very far away. How much do you use your hands or not? Food, how do you raise children? The tone of voice that you use, how you show deference to somebody or respect. Do you look down? Do you meet them by looking in the eye? So all of these things are parts of our culture that we're not always kind of aware of when meeting with other cultures, but it's very much part of people's culture. You might not even be aware of it yourself, but all of these things are part of that, and that's part of what we're transmitting to children when we're socializing. A method of socialization is conforming to group norms. So that elevator video, once again, is group norms. He thought, oh, okay, I guess it's a group norm to stand this weird way in an elevator. And so our communities with our families, our neighbors, neighborhoods, our churches, our friends and peers, the clubs, our hobbies that we have, and our schools as well, help us conform to group norms. So there are specific ways that we want people to act, and they will help you decide what that kind of social norm is. Traditions, like I said before, are just passing down customs and stories, beliefs, ideals from generation to generation. So your grandparents maybe have family stories that they tell you, and they're passing down kind of customs or things like that. I have a picture of Santa, because Santa is very different in all different kinds of countries. And one of my grandmothers comes from a German family. She wasn't born there, but she came from a German family. And German Santa is a little bit scary. And there's actually kind of a Santa-like demon, the Krampus, that will kind of eat you if you are a bad kid and drag you down to hell. And so that's an example of the Germanic tradition of Santa Claus is very different. This is the Dutch version, which looks a lot more friendly. And then you can look at other kinds of cultures that have Santa Claus, and they might look or behave differently, and you'll have different traditions depending on your family, your ethnic group, your country, your religion, all of that. We also need to acquire social roles. So if your role is supervisor, you need to lead employees. If you're a parent, you nurture and raise children. If you're a friend, you provide emotional support and fun. If you're a teacher, you facilitate learning. So we all have a function or a complement of a group. So I'd like you to kind of think right now, what are some of your social roles? Are you a sister, a brother? Are you a child? Are you a parent, soon to be parent? Are you an employee or a supervisor? Or do you volunteer? So what are some of the roles that you play? So what are some roles you play? How does your role complement or support those around you? So if you are a teacher, then you're facilitating education. If you are a parent, you're providing emotional support and protection for your children. And then how does this role possibly support the socialization of children? The other ones that I just gave you, obviously you can tell with teaching and parents, that's very close. But if you were a bus driver, your role would be to get children safely to school every day so that they can learn. That's really important in socialization because you expect the bus not to get too rowdy. You want children sitting down and being safe. So you're socializing them in appropriate bus or transportation skills that they will need. So some of the agents of socialization, so I'm going to go through them, and these are very similar to our microsystem. So these are the parts of our microsystem, and I'm going to go through the agents of socialization that might be in your life. So some of them are, this is your introduction to society, is your family. It's your first introduction. So your family structure and what they're, when they take you to the grocery store, when you're little, they take you to the park, they take you to school, they take you to family functions, community events. They are introducing you to society and showing you society in a very, very small form of a family. We also pass on our socioeconomic status. So you're born into a family with a certain amount of money and resources, and that's going to impact how much you can use your exosystem and what you have available to you and what you can buy and not buy. I think the biggest thing is this very bottom one. Oops, sorry. Right here, it serves as a child's first reference group for values, norms, and practices. One refers to and evaluating one's behavior. And I think that's a really good one. I came from a family that that takes their shoes off in their house. So never wear shoes in the house, didn't want to track in dirt, and just a little bit more informal as well. But my husband came from a family that always wears shoes in the house. So when we first moved in together, we kind of had to negotiate that, because that was my kind of norm and practice is don't bring your shoes in, your shoes are outside, your shoes are dirty, shoes stay outside in the car, garage, outside, something like that. Spoiler alert, we have 3 kids. We've been together 15 years and he no longer wears his shoes in the house. So I guess I won that one. So he picked up on and he kind of came into my family's norms and practices, but there are examples of things that he did in his family that I have now embraced as well. Another one within our microsystem is schools and childcare. So a school and childcare, you can have your teachers are definitely part of your that agent of socialization, right? So they transmit culture to you. They help you understand knowledge. They teach you ABCs, 1, 2, 3, and then it gets more complex as you go there. They also teach you how to wait in line, how to raise your hand. The things that we think are important, you're learning from your teachers when you go to school. You're also learning it from your duties that watch you on the playground. You're learning it from the custodians. Anybody that you come in contact with your school is helping you. The crosswalk person is helping you learn the safety rules in your neighborhood so that you are safe and how you should be crossing the road. So this is the agents of socialization in your schools and childcare are a lot of times your teachers. And peers. So peers are friends. And typically when we're talking about a peer group, we're talking about somebody who's the same age and social status. So typically, especially when you're younger, your peers are because of proximity, how close you are to somebody or some kind of relationship that you have with them through your parents. So typically they're people in your neighborhood, in your town, in your city. You wouldn't have a peer maybe that lives 3 hours away. That might be, even on social media, that might be difficult for a young child who wants to play a lot to have that. So typically they're around the same age and they're of the same social status because you live in the same place. So most likely you have the same socioeconomic status and social class as well. Children are starting to understand the views of others and are learning how to cooperate, share, take turns. So now, especially after 7 years old, when they are getting better at empathy, perspective, taking the perspective of other people or knowing that other people have inner states, feelings, needs, emotions, then they will learn how to cooperate. Hopefully they'll learn how to share. Before 7, it's more difficult. If you've ever seen or met a 2-year-old, they are not known for sharing, and that's totally okay. That's developmentally normal. We're helping them learn those skills. They're not going to be great at it. It's hard. It's hard for us to want to share. It's hard for us to want to take turns. You know, if we're waiting in the cafeteria because we want to pick up our breakfast burrito or something like that, and there's like 15 people in line to pick one up, and then we have to wait to pay, we get a little like, oh, gotta wait. So if we as adults are still working on these skills, we can't expect a 2 or 3-year-old who's very, very young and new to this world to be able to do this as well. So egocentrism as well is that 7-year-old perspective taking that I was just talking about. So it's being able to look at the world from one's own point of view. That is what ends around 7, and then they can take on the perspective of others. And through that, once you are getting older, you can learn more empathy. You can learn conflict negotiation. How do you get in a fight with somebody? How do you make up with somebody? You should learn how to fight fair. How yelling, that's very culturally specific as well, that you'll learn from your peers. How much should you yell or not yell? What's expected of you in your culture when it comes to peers? Mass media. So this is not just social media that we have kind of talked about. This is newspapers that you read, books that you read, magazines that you read, the radio or podcasts that you listen to, television shows or Hulu shows that you watch, videos that you might have, home videos, DVDs, I guess if you still have those, your Prime videos that you buy or rent, also computers and any kind of technology, and basically any kind of communication. It could be road signs that's communicating to you how big the speed limit is, GPS is telling you where to go. All of that kind of has messages, and that can also socializes you. And that socializes people a lot more now because we do have that kind of social media. So we have YouTube, and children, like kids YouTube, we have social media and children getting phones much younger as well. And that is really trying to kind of understand how how you are supposed to be online. And it also translates to how we are in person as well. So mass media could be a part of our agents of socialization. Community as well. So the term community is derived from the Latin word for fellowship, and I think that's a great way. And that's why we say typically in our microsystem, our community or instead of neighborhood, because it's kind of the people that you have relationships with. So police officers, firefighters, doctors, pediatricians, nurses, bus drivers, the person who sells you milk at the corner store. So we all live in a particular geographical area, and we'll start to get to know the people who live next to us, the people who provide us services, and those types of people are more agents of socialization. So they will help us with friendship, hopefully. They'll hopefully help us with socializing children as well. So teaching, it was raining really bad one day, and I was taking my trash in, and then I have a neighbor that's in her 70s, so I just pulled her trash in too, and my children saw it and they were like, "What are you doing? Why'd you do that?" And I was like, "Well, I was already out. I already had my raincoat. I was already wet, so I might as well save her from getting wet because she's a little bit older. Sometimes it's hard for older people to get around." So they kind of see, and from that socialization, how I act in my community, because I was that person's community member. So some communities can be quite close-knit, some might be a little bit less. But in this example, I have some people in the Navy, because in Southern California, we have a lot of service members, and they are part of our community as well. And they typically do a lot of volunteer work through their commands and are vibrant parts of our community as well. And if you were growing up in a military family, they would be more agents of socialization and maybe closer to you as well. All right, so we also teach children through consequences and punishment. And consequences and punishment are typically when a child is being socialized what not to do. So we don't want you to hit people. We don't want you to yell in people's face. We don't want you to use bad words. So we are teaching that by giving consequences when they do it. We're giving them a consequence, and when they do the right thing, we're hopefully giving them praise. Some people use punishment, which can be physically or psychologically kind of painful stimuli. We typically try to give consequences though. So you hit your friend, I need you to go play in another area of the classroom for a while. We don't hit our friends. Something like that is a consequence. So when you hit, you don't get to play in the block area. You have to walk away for a while until you can kind of help yourself kind of regain your sense of control, and then you can come back. A punishment might be at home. If a sibling hit another sibling, then the person who hit might get spanked, put in timeout, had something taken away from them. So typically out in the community, we do more consequences, or we should, and most people are trying to kind of get away from more physical punishment, but it also can be taking away something nice. So taking away, okay, your 30 minutes of TV time is taken away today because you didn't do your chores or you weren't kind to your sister. We're socializing you once again. We're telling you, I expect you to be kind and I expect you to help out in the house. When you don't do that, I might take something away as a consequence. So a lot of times we learn by doing as well. Bandura kind of is a theorist for this, and he really kind of was looking at modeling. So he has a famous video, or it's a video that we can watch, but it's a famous experiment where they had teachers kind of beat up a doll. So they were hitting the doll, pushing it, and it's one of those dolls that like falls back and goes back up again. It's a Bobo doll. So they would like punch it and hit it and scream at it. And the children were watching this, and then they started to model that behavior because they thought, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do. When you see these weird dolls, you kick them and you punch them. So the children saw and were doing and were imitating by doing. All right. We are going So I'm going to end with this, sorry. So our self-concept. So our socialization allows children to develop a sense of themselves and their worth in a larger group or community. So socialization is what you want to develop your inner sense, and you also want to understand your sense in a larger group or community. What's expected of you, what's your role, what does your culture want you to do? Some people will push back against those expectations, but they have learned those norms and rules. They might not agree with them, but through socialization, we have helped you understand who you are as a child and an adult, and we have also kind of helped you, hopefully, be able to act appropriately in your specific culture or the specific place that you live. All right, so that is today's lecture, all on agents of socialization. I know it was a little bit, there was a lot of information, so don't feel bad about going back, pausing it, not listening to me ramble on and on and just kind of going through it. I just want to wrap up though that we have agents of socialization. They're part of our microsystem a lot. Our family is a really big one. So parents or whoever you consider in your family, your peers or friends, typically who are the same age and social status. We also have in our community, we have lots of community helpers that can also socialize us. In school, we have our teachers and people who work at our school who socialize us and how you should act when you are being educated. And then we also have our media, which gives us messages and all of the things that we read. And online and on technology, we're learning a lot of new things as that technology continues to change. All right, so if you need to go back and watch it again, this video lecture will be up all semester. So if you wanted to go back and relearn about what agents of socialization were maybe 10 weeks from now, this will always be up so that you can see it. You're also going to have a reading that's going to support you in this as well. All right, I'll see you guys online.